With the top connected to the base, we can now take a look at attaching each leaf to the top. We'll begin by flipping the project upside down and adding our leaf pieces. And I'm also checking that all of my markings are lined up, meaning each of the piece is in the proper location. Now, before I attach anything or lay anything out, I want to make sure that I have a flush surface where my pieces come together. If there's any irregularities in your workbench, it might cause one of the pieces to move. So I'm going to apply a hand clamp to the seam so that I know my top surface is going to be flush. I also need to check and make sure that my end is perfectly flush. I'm also going to add a bar clamp and very gently snug that down. I want very, very little pressure, just enough to help keep that seam tight. And then I'm going to add a second bar clamp on the other side. Again, applying just a little bit of light pressure just to snug those pieces together. So taking a look at how this is set up, I am on the corner of the table. I installed 2 hand clamps, one on each of the seams, and 2 bar clamps with just a tiny bit of pressure just to hold my pieces together. Next, I need to determine where the hinge is going to go. Running down the exact center of the hinge, we have a pin. That pin needs to run exactly down our seam where the top centerpiece meets the top leaf. The problem is, if you did a good job laying out the top, gluing it, cutting it, and keeping everything lined up, it's near impossible to see that seam. If I gently loosen up my clamps, I can see that seam starting to appear. To help me line everything up, I'm going to draw a pencil line right down that seam and then tighten up my clamps. Now when I go to lay out my hinge, it is very easy to line up that center pin with my seam. It is vital that the hinge pin be lined up with the seam. I'm also going to space this out 3/4 of an inch so that it is in line with the edge of my cleat. And with that hinge positioned correctly, I'm going to take a scratch-awl or a screw and put a small divot right in the center of one of the hole locations. And using a 3/32 drill bit, I need to drill down the length of the threads, but not any further. So I will be applying a little piece of tape to this drill bit so I know when to stop. Do not drill all the way through your project. And then we're going to come back and install that screw. And at this stage, we are only going to install 4 of the screws. This will leave us 2 additional screws just in case we need to adjust something later. Now, after the first 2 hinges are installed with 4 screws, we need to rotate our project. And leaving the bar clamps on, I'm very carefully going to rotate the project. And this will allow us to repeat the same process to the other side. And after we have all 4 hinges installed with 4 screws on each hinge, we can remove the clamps and flip the project over to see how it looks. If everything functions as it should, and no adjustments are needed, we can install those last screws.